Return the laundry. Now. Alpha King Everett Ashford's voice stopped the entire royal sanctuary from moving. Every guard, every caretaker, and every noble observer turned toward the same impossible sight. The most feared wolf in Silvercrest Pack was sitting proudly beside a pile of freshly washed clothes that clearly belonged to someone else. Clara Whitmore stared at Fenrir, the Alpha King's shadow wolf, with one hand still holding the empty laundry basket. "You stole my things again?" she asked quietly. Fenrir lifted his head with complete dignity. He did not look guilty. He looked offended that she had questioned his decision. Everett stepped closer, his dark coat moving with every controlled step. The entire sanctuary lowered their eyes. Everyone knew the Alpha King's reputation. Cold, precise, untouchable. The kind of leader who could silence a council meeting with one glance. But today, his greatest challenge was not a rival pack or a political crisis. It was his own wolf refusing to give back a blue scarf. "Fenrir," Everett said. The wolf did not move. Clara pressed her lips together, trying not to smile. "I think he disagrees." The nearby guards immediately looked away, pretending they had suddenly become fascinated by the stone walls. Nobody joked around the Alpha King. Nobody challenged him. But Clara had spent enough time around animals to recognize something most people missed. Fenrir was not being rebellious. He was being dramatic. "He isn't stealing," Clara said. Everett looked at her. "My wolf has taken 7 pieces of your laundry in 3 days. 8, Clara corrected. "He took my gloves this morning." Everett stared at her for a moment. "You are correcting the number of times my royal wolf has taken your personal belongings?" Clara shrugged. "Someone has to keep accurate records." For the first time in years, several people in the sanctuary witnessed something impossible. The Alpha King almost smiled. Almost. Clara noticed it disappear before anyone else could. She had always been good at noticing small things. A nervous animal's tail movement. A frightened bird's hesitation. A person pretending they were fine when they were not. And Everett Ashford was the most complicated creature she had ever met. Everyone saw the crown. Everyone saw the power. But Clara saw the exhaustion behind his eyes. Fenrir saw it too. That was why the wolf kept coming to her. At least, that was what Clara believed. She did not know the truth yet. She did not know that Fenrir had recognized her long before Everett was willing to admit it. She did not know that the strange warmth she felt whenever the wolf appeared was connected to something much older than friendship. The first sign came when Fenrir finally stood. The massive wolf carefully picked up the blue scarf, walked past every guard in the room, and placed it directly into Clara's hands. Then he turned around and walked away. The entire sanctuary went silent. Everett frowned. "That is unusual." Clara looked down at the scarf. Something was different. The fabric carried the faint scent of wildflowers from the royal garden. Attached to it was a small bundle of fresh white flowers. She looked toward the Alpha King. Everett looked equally confused. "Those were not mine," he said. Clara raised an eyebrow. "Your wolf brought me flowers." Fenrir stopped at the doorway and looked back, clearly satisfied with himself. For a moment, Clara wondered if she was imagining it. But then she felt it. A strange pull. A quiet connection. Like something unseen had just noticed her. Everett felt it too. His expression changed for the smallest second. A reaction only someone watching carefully would notice. The bond. The one secret every alpha tried to control. The one thing a king could not command. And standing in the middle of the royal sanctuary, surrounded by a pack that believed power came from blood and status, Clara Whitmore held the first clue that the Alpha King's wolf had already made his choice. The next morning, Clara Whitmore found 3 more flowers outside her door and one very proud wolf sitting beside them. She stopped halfway through opening the small wooden gate of her cottage inside the royal sanctuary and stared. "Fenrir," she said slowly, "you understand that leaving flowers is supposed to make you look less suspicious, right?" The giant shadow wolf tilted his head. Clara sighed. "You are still the worst secret messenger in Silvercrest." Fenrir looked completely satisfied with himself. Over the past 12 hours, the entire sanctuary had changed. The story had spread faster than any official announcement from the palace. The Alpha King's wolf had chosen a caretaker's doorway, not a noblewoman's room, not a council member's estate. A simple cottage belonging to Clara Whitmore, an Omega who spent her days caring for royal animals. Some people found it amusing. Others found it concerning. In a pack built around traditions, bloodlines, and carefully arranged alliances, An unexpected choice could become a very complicated problem. Clara knew that better than anyone. That was why she carried the flowers inside before anyone else saw them. She did not want attention. She had spent years learning how to exist quietly. "You know everyone is talking about this, right?" she asked Fenrir as she placed the flowers in a small glass jar. The wolf followed her into the room without permission, which was apparently his favorite habit. "You cannot just walk around the royal grounds making decisions for your king." Fenrir sat down. His expression suggested that he believed he absolutely could. Clara crossed her arms. "You are impossible." A low sound came from the wolf. It was almost a laugh. Clara smiled before she could stop herself. Then she heard footsteps outside. Not the rushed steps of guards. Not the hurried steps of servants. These were calm, measured steps. The kind of footsteps belonging to someone who never needed to announce his arrival. Everett Ashford stood outside her cottage a moment later. The Alpha King looked exactly as he always did in public. Perfect posture. Controlled expression. A man who carried an entire pack on his shoulders and refused to let anyone see the weight. "Your Majesty," Clara said, stepping back. Everett looked at Fenrir. Then he looked at the flowers. Then back at Fenrir. "Explain." The wolf immediately looked away. Clara covered a smile. "I do not think he is planning to apologize." Everett entered slowly. "Fenrir has ignored royal commands before." He paused. "But he has never ignored me for a flower arrangement." Clara studied his face. There was something unusual in his voice. Not anger. Confusion. Almost disbelief. "Maybe he is trying to tell you something," she said. Everett's eyes moved to hers. "And what exactly do you think he is saying?" Clara hesitated. She could feel something between them. Not just between her and Fenrir. Something deeper. A connection she did not understand yet. "I think," she said carefully, "that your wolf knows something you do not want to admit." The room became quiet. For a moment, Everett looked less like a king and more like a man who had just heard a truth he was not prepared to face. His wolf moved closer to Clara's side. Everett noticed. Everyone noticed. The bond between an alpha and his wolf was something sacred. Something private. Something that should never be influenced by another person. But Fenrir had made his choice. "You should be careful," Everett said quietly. Clara looked at him. "Is that a warning?" "It is advice." "From the Alpha King?" "From someone who knows this pack better than anyone." Clara looked at Fenrir, then back at Everett. "Maybe your pack needs to learn that not everything unexpected is dangerous." Everett did not answer. Because deep down, he knew she was right. But outside the sanctuary walls, not everyone would see Clara as a healer or a friend. Some would see her as a threat to an old system. And someone in the pack had already started asking the most dangerous question of all. Why had the Alpha King's wolf chosen her? By sunrise, the story had already reached every corner of Silvercrest Pack. The royal wolf had chosen a cottage. The Alpha King had visited a caretaker before breakfast. And the Omega everyone ignored had somehow become the person standing closest to the most powerful wolf in the kingdom. Clara Whitmore was used to whispers. She had heard them her entire life. But these whispers felt different. They were not about her work. They were about her place in the pack. As she walked through the royal sanctuary carrying a basket of herbs, two noble attendants stopped talking the moment she passed. Clara did not need enhanced hearing to know they had been discussing her. "You are becoming famous," a familiar voice said beside her. Clara looked down. Fenrir was walking next to her like he owned the path. That is not a compliment coming from the creature who started all of this. Fenrir looked ahead with complete confidence. Clara sighed. "You really do not feel guilty, do you?" The wolf continued walking. Apparently, guilt was not included in his personality. Later that afternoon, Clara was summoned to the royal residence. She expected another conversation about boundaries. Instead, she found Everett Ashford standing beside a large window overlooking the Silvercrest territory. The Alpha King did not turn around immediately. Below them, the pack moved through the city. Farmers, guards, healers, merchants, and families. Every person depending on his decisions. "Do you know why traditions exist?" Everett asked. Clara stopped near the doorway. "Usually because someone in power was afraid of change." Everett looked back at her. For a moment, she thought she had gone too far. But instead of anger, she saw curiosity. "You always answer honestly." "Most animals do not respond well to lies," Clara said. "People are usually worse." A quiet breath escaped him. Not quite a laugh. "Close." Everett looked toward Fenrir, who was resting near the fireplace. My wolf has never behaved this way before. Clara stepped closer. Maybe because you have never allowed him to. Everett's expression changed slightly. The words touched something hidden. You think you understand my wolf? I think I understand loneliness. The room became quiet. Clara looked at Fenrir. Animals do not hide what they need. People do. Everett had spent years being a king before being a man. He had learned to control every reaction, every emotion, every weakness. The pack needed certainty. The throne needed stability. The council needed a leader who never hesitated. But standing there with Clara, he felt something he had avoided for years. A connection he could not command. A bond he could not negotiate. Then the doors opened. Lord Adrian Voss entered with 2 council members behind him. His expression was polite, but his eyes were measuring everything. Your Majesty, Voss said. The council requests a discussion about recent events. Everett's face returned to its royal calm. About my wolf. About the influence surrounding your wolf, Voss replied carefully. Clara understood immediately. This was not about Fenrir taking laundry. It was about her. An alpha king must be careful about unexpected attachments, Voss continued. The pack depends on order. Everett's gaze hardened. Clara Whitmore has done nothing wrong. Voss smiled slightly. That is not the concern, Your Majesty. The concern is whether the wolf has recognized something the king has not. For the first time, Clara felt the room change. The words were not a direct accusation. They were something more dangerous. A question placed in front of everyone. Everett looked at Fenrir. Fenrir looked at Clara. And Clara realized the secret they were trying to hide was already becoming impossible to ignore. The bond was not just between an alpha and his wolf anymore. The entire pack was beginning to feel it. The council chamber had never felt so quiet. Clara Whitmore stood beside the Alpha King, surrounded by people who had spent their entire lives protecting the traditions of Silvercrest Pack. Every face in the room carried the same question. Why her? Why would the royal wolf choose an Omega who had no noble title, no powerful family, and no place among the old bloodlines? Lord Adrian Voss folded his hands calmly. Your Majesty, no one is accusing Miss Whitmore of wrongdoing. Clara almost smiled. She had learned that whenever someone said no one was accusing someone, an accusation was usually coming next. Voss continued, but the bond between an alpha and his wolf is not a simple matter. It affects leadership. It affects the entire pack. Everett Ashford remained still. Years of ruling had taught him how to hide his reactions. But Clara noticed the smallest change. The tension in his shoulders. The way his fingers tightened near his side. He was not angry at Voss. He was fighting himself. Fenrir has always protected this pack, Everett said. That has not changed. No, Voss replied. But perhaps his judgment has. The room became colder. Clara looked at Fenrir resting near the doorway. The wolf was watching everyone carefully. He was not confused. He knew exactly what was happening. Clara stepped forward. You are treating him like a problem because he chose someone you did not expect. Several council members turned toward her. Everett looked surprised. Most people would never interrupt a council discussion. Clara continued. Fenrir is not a weapon. He is not a symbol. He is part of your alpha bond. Maybe instead of asking why he chose me, you should ask why you are afraid of his choice. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Everett looked at her. Not as a caretaker. Not as an Omega. As someone whose words reached him. The meeting ended shortly after, but the tension did not disappear. In fact, it followed Clara back to the sanctuary. The next few days changed everything. The flowers stopped appearing at her door. The laundry stopped disappearing. Fenrir stopped his playful visits. At first, Clara thought the wolf had finally listened to reason. Then she saw him sitting alone near the edge of the forest, watching the palace from a distance. Something was wrong. You are a terrible actor, Clara said as she approached. Fenrir looked at her. Even worse than when you pretend not to steal my things. The wolf lowered his head slightly. Clara placed a hand against his fur. The feeling came immediately. Not words. Not thoughts. Emotion. Worry. Frustration. And something deeper. Everett. The connection between them was stronger than she realized. Fenrir was not avoiding her. He was protecting Everett. Later that evening, Clara found the Alpha King alone in the training hall. The place was empty except for the sound of rain against the windows. You told Fenrir to stay away from me, she said. Everett did not deny it. I told him the pack needed stability. Clara looked at him carefully. And what did you need? The question caught him off guard. For once, The Alpha King had no immediate answer. I do not know how to be both, he admitted quietly. A king, and he stopped. Clara waited. And someone who wants something for himself. The honesty surprised her. Everett Ashford, the man everyone believed had no weaknesses, was standing in front of her admitting he was afraid. Before Clara could answer, Fenrir suddenly lifted his head. A new scent had entered the room. Not danger, not a threat, a message. A small envelope had been placed near the doorway. It carried the royal seal. Everett opened it and read the words inside. The council was calling for an official review of his bond with Fenrir, and hidden beneath the formal language was the real message. They were not investigating the wolf. They were investigating Clara. The first challenge against the Alpha King's choice had begun. The official review began at dawn, and by sunrise the entire Silvercrest pack knew one thing. The Alpha King was being questioned, but everyone understood the real subject of the investigation was Clara Whitmore. She stood outside the council hall with Fenrir beside her, watching nobles and pack leaders enter through the grand doors. For the first time since arriving at the royal sanctuary, Clara felt the weight of attention pressing against her. Not because she had done anything wrong, because she had become important to someone powerful. Fenrir nudged her hand gently. Clara looked down. You know, this is usually the part where a normal wolf would stop causing problems. Fenrir blinked. You are not normal, are you? The wolf looked away with complete confidence. Clara smiled despite herself. Even now, he refused to admit anything. Inside the council chamber, Everett Ashford sat at the head of the table. He looked calm, but Clara could sense the difference. She had learned his quiet signals. The way he held himself too straight when he was under pressure. The way his eyes moved toward Fenrir whenever he needed reassurance. Lord Adrian Voss placed several documents on the table. The concern is simple, Voss said. The Alpha Bond must remain stable. The leader of a pack cannot allow personal feelings to influence decisions. Everett's expression hardened. You are questioning my ability to lead. I am questioning whether you are allowing your wolf to make decisions for you. Clara felt Fenrir shift beside her. The wolf disliked those words. Not because they insulted him, because they misunderstood him. Fenrir has never controlled me, Everett said. He has protected me. Voss looked toward Clara. And now he protects her. The room became silent. Clara knew this was the moment everyone had been waiting for. They wanted her to defend herself. They wanted her to apologize for existing too close to the throne. Instead, she simply said, maybe the problem is that everyone here thinks protection is weakness. Several council members exchanged looks. Everett turned toward her. She continued, animals do not choose based on titles. They do not care about family names or political alliances. They recognize honesty. Her words reminded Everett of something he had forgotten. Years ago, before he became Alpha King, he had trusted his instincts. He had listened to his wolf. Somewhere along the way, leadership had taught him to ignore every feeling that could not be explained on paper. After the meeting ended, Everett found Clara near the sanctuary gardens. The evening air was cool, and the royal grounds were unusually quiet. You should not have spoken that way to the council, he said. Clara looked at him. You mean I should have been more afraid? Everett paused. No, his voice softened. I mean you could have made things harder for yourself. Clara looked at Fenrir resting nearby. Things were already hard for me. That answer stayed with him. Because she was right. She had entered his world with no protection, no influence, and no powerful name. Yet she had faced his council with more courage than many experienced leaders. Why are you not afraid of me? Everett asked quietly. Clara considered the question. Because Fenrir trusts you. Everett looked surprised. That is your reason? Yes. Animals notice things people ignore. A small silence passed between them. Then Everett said, you believe there is something between us. Clara felt the strange pull again. The connection she could not explain. The feeling that had started with flowers, laundry, and a stubborn wolf who refused to leave her alone. I think your wolf knows the truth before you do. Everett looked away. For a moment, he was not the Alpha King. He was simply a man afraid of losing control over something that mattered. Then Fenrir suddenly stood and moved toward the edge of the garden. He stared into the darkness beyond the trees. Clara noticed immediately. What is it? Everett asked. She watched the wolf carefully. He is worried. The Alpha King followed Fenrir's gaze. Hidden among the shadows was a single envelope placed on the stone path. No royal seal. No name. Only one sentence written across the front. The past you buried is waking up. Everett's expression changed. Clara realized this was not only about their bond anymore. Someone was using his hidden fears against him. And this time, Fenrir was not the only one trying to protect him. The message left on the stone path changed everything. For years, Everett Ashford had carried the weight of the Silvercrest crown without allowing anyone to see what was beneath it. But now, someone had reached into the one part of his past he had locked away. The part connected to the night he stopped trusting his own instincts. Clara Whitmore noticed the change before anyone else did. The next morning, Everett was standing in the Royal Archive, surrounded by old records and forgotten documents. Fenrir sat beside him, unusually quiet. "You know something?" Clara said as she entered. Everett looked up. "Everyone thinks you understand animals." Clara glanced at Fenrir. "I understand when they are pretending." A small pause followed. "And right now, he is pretending he is not worried." Fenrir looked away, which only proved her point. Everett almost smiled, but the expression disappeared quickly. "There was a time when I trusted my wolf completely," he said. Clara waited. She knew better than to interrupt a memory that was difficult to share. "Before I became Alpha King, I believed strength came from listening, from understanding the pack. But after the betrayal," he stopped. Clara noticed the word he chose. Not mistake. Not conflict. Betrayal. Everett continued quietly. "Someone close to the royal family used that trust against us. After that, I learned to rely on rules. On strategy. On control." Clara looked at Fenrir. "And you started believing feelings were dangerous." Everett did not answer. He did not need to. The silence said enough. Clara walked toward the old shelves filled with generations of Silvercrest history. "Animals do not forget kindness," she said. "They remember who stayed when things were difficult." Everett looked at her. "You think that is what Fenrir is doing?" "I think he remembers the person you were before you became the person everyone needed you to be." The words reached deeper than she expected. Everett turned away, hiding the emotion on his face. A king could not show uncertainty. A king could not admit that sometimes he missed being someone who did not have to carry every decision alone. Then Fenrir moved suddenly. The wolf walked to one of the oldest shelves and touched a small wooden box with his nose. Clara and Everett exchanged a look. "That was not there yesterday," Everett said. Clara carefully opened the box. Inside was an old piece of parchment and a faded symbol from the early days of Silvercrest Pack. Everett recognized it immediately. "That belonged to my father's council." Clara studied the document. "What does it say?" Everett read the words slowly. The record described a tradition older than the current royal laws. A true alpha bond was not created by status, bloodline, or political agreement. It was recognized through trust between the alpha, the wolf, and the person who could see the truth of both. Clara looked at Fenrir. The wolf simply sat there, as if revealing ancient royal secrets was an ordinary afternoon activity. "Your wolf has been busy," she said. Everett looked at him. "He has always been impossible." Clara smiled. "Maybe he has always been trying to help." For the first time in a long while, Everett allowed himself to consider that possibility. But before the moment could last, the archive doors opened. Lord Adrian Voss entered with a serious expression. "Your Majesty, the council has reached a decision." Everett's face returned to the calm mask everyone knew. "And what decision is that?" Voss looked toward Clara. "The pack believes the Omega at the center of this bond must step away from royal matters until the investigation is complete." Clara felt the words hit harder than she expected. Not because she wanted power. She never had. But because once again, people were deciding her place without asking her. Everett stepped forward. "No," the single word filled the archive. Voss looked surprised. "Your Majesty?" Everett stood beside Clara, not in front of her. "She is not the problem." His voice was steady. "And I will not allow my pack to punish someone simply because they do not understand something." For years, Everett had chosen duty over himself. But now he finally understood something important. Leadership was not about avoiding difficult choices. It was about making the right one when everyone was watching. Outside the archive, the entire pack waited for his response. And for the first time, the Alpha King was prepared to let them see the truth. The entire Silvercrest pack gathered in the royal courtyard before sunset. For generations, the Alpha King had stood before his people as a symbol of certainty, a leader without hesitation, a protector without fear. But today, everyone saw something different. They saw Everett Ashford standing beside Clara Whitmore, an Omega with no noble title, no powerful family name, and no place in the old traditions. And for the first time, Everett did not step away from the choices Wolf had made. Lord Adrian Voss stood before the gathered pack with a calm expression. Your Majesty, this is not about personal feelings. It is about the stability of Silvercrest. Clara watched the crowd carefully. Some looked curious. Some looked doubtful. A few looked openly against her. She understood something important in that moment. The pack was not angry because she had done something wrong. They were afraid because she represented something they could not control. Everett looked across the courtyard. For years, I have asked this pack to trust my decisions. His voice carried across the stone walls. Today, I ask you to trust the bond that has protected this kingdom for generations. A murmur moved through the crowd. Voss stepped forward. A bond can be misunderstood. A wolf can be influenced. Fenrir lifted his head at those words. The royal wolf had always been patient, always observant. But now even he seemed tired of being treated like a problem instead of a partner. Clara placed a hand gently against his fur. She felt the emotion beneath the surface. Not anger, disappointment. Fenrir had spent years protecting Everett. And now the pack was questioning the very connection that helped Everett become a great leader. Fenrir is not forcing him, Clara said. Her voice was quiet, but everyone heard it. He is reminding him. The crowd became silent. Everett looked at her. She continued. Your Alpha King spent years believing he had to carry everything alone. Fenrir never abandoned him. He never betrayed him. He stayed. Those words reached Everett in a way no speech from the council ever had. Because they were true. Fenrir had been there through every difficult decision. Every sleepless night. Every moment when Everett wondered if he was becoming the kind of ruler he never wanted to be. Then something unexpected happened. Fenrir walked away from Everett and approached Clara. The pack watched carefully. Everyone expected a display of power. Instead, the wolf simply lowered his head beside her hand. A quiet sign of trust. A simple choice. Everett looked at the scene and understood what Fenrir had been trying to show him from the beginning. A true bond was not about control. It was about trust. Later that evening, Clara found Everett near the old gardens. The place was quiet except for the sound of water from the stone fountain. You changed the way you spoke to them today, she said. Everett looked toward the palace lights. I realized something. What? I spent years trying to prove I was worthy of being Alpha King. He paused. I forgot that I was already responsible for the people who believed in me. Clara smiled softly. That sounds like something Fenrir would approve of. Everett actually laughed. A real laugh. Small, but genuine. It surprised them both. For a moment, the distance between them disappeared. No crown. No council. No expectations. Just two people standing beneath the evening sky. Then Fenrir appeared from behind the garden path, carrying something in his mouth. Clara looked down. Is that my scarf? Everett closed his eyes. I was afraid he would stop. Clara laughed. The wolf placed the scarf at her feet and walked away proudly. But this time, something was different. There was no hiding. No pretending. Everyone in Silvercrest knew exactly what Fenrir was doing. He was not causing trouble. He was making sure his alpha stopped running from the truth. And somewhere beyond the palace walls, someone watching the courtyard realized the old plan was failing. Because the Alpha King was no longer standing alone. And that made him far more difficult to manipulate. The morning after the royal courtyard gathering, Silvercrest Pack was quieter than usual. Not peaceful. Not yet. It was the kind of silence that came before a storm, when everyone knew something important had changed, but no one knew what would happen next. Clara Whitmore noticed it the moment she entered the sanctuary. The workers who once ignored her now greeted her with careful respect. The nobles who once looked past her now watched her closely. She had not gained a title. She had not asked for one. But everyone knew the Alpha King had chosen to stand beside her. Fenrir, of course, acted like this was the most obvious decision in the world. He followed Clara through the sanctuary carrying a small basket in his mouth. Clara stopped and stared. Fenrir, please tell me you did not steal that from the royal kitchen. The wolf looked away. Clara sighed. That means you absolutely did. Inside the basket were fresh apples and a small note. Clara picked it up and recognized Everett's handwriting. For the animals. Not for the wolf who thinks he owns the kitchen. She smiled. He knows you too well. Fenrir looked proud. But the small moment of happiness did not last. By afternoon, a new problem reached the palace. Several members of the council had discovered that old records connected Clara's unusual ability with a forgotten tradition of the Silvercrest Pack. They were no longer questioning whether Finra liked her. They were questioning what her existence meant for the future of the throne. Everett found Clara in the archive that evening, surrounded by old books and royal records. "They are afraid of something they do not understand," Clara said before he could speak. Everett looked surprised. "You already know why I am here. You have the same expression Finra gets when he is about to cause trouble." Everett almost smiled. "That is not a flattering comparison. It is accurate." He looked at the documents on the table. "The council believes the bond between you and Finra could change the balance of the pack." Clara closed the book in front of her. "Could it?" Everett was quiet. The question was harder than he expected, because the answer was yes. Not because Clara wanted power, not because she wanted the throne, but because she challenged everything Silvercrest had accepted for generations. She proved that loyalty was not always inherited. Trust was not always earned through status. "When I became Alpha King," Everett said, "I promised to protect tradition." Clara looked at him. "And what did you promise to protect first?" He looked toward the window. Beyond the palace walls were thousands of people who depended on him. "The pack." Clara nodded. "Then remember that a pack is made of people, not rules." Everett carried those words with him into the council meeting that night. Lord Adrian Voss was waiting. "Your Majesty, this cannot continue." Everett sat at the head of the table. "Explain." "The Omega has changed the way you make decisions." Everett looked directly at him. "No. She reminded me why I make decisions." The room went silent. Voss carefully placed a document on the table. "Then perhaps you should see what she has been hiding." Everett frowned. Clara's name was written across the page. The document claimed that her family had once been connected to a secret branch of the pack, one that disappeared years ago. Before Everett could respond, the doors opened. Clara stood there with Finra beside her. She had heard enough. "If you have questions about me," she said calmly, "ask me directly." Everett immediately stood. "Clara." She looked at him. "I am tired of people deciding what I am before they know who I am." The honesty in her voice affected everyone in the room. Even Voss had no immediate answer. Finra stepped forward and placed his paw on the old document. Then he looked at Everett. Clara understood immediately. The wolf was not warning them about Clara. He was warning them about the truth behind the document. Someone had hidden something. Someone wanted the pack looking at her instead of looking at them. Everett picked up the paper again, this time with a different suspicion. The investigation was no longer about Clara joining the royal world. It was about discovering who had been controlling that world from the shadows. The truth hidden inside the old document changed Silvercrest forever. For the first time in many years, the pack stopped asking whether Clara Whitmore belonged beside the Alpha King. Instead, they started asking who had tried to erase her story. Everett Ashford spent the entire night inside the royal archive, reading records that had been ignored for generations. Clara stood across from him, watching the same man who could command an entire pack struggle with a simple truth. "You are angry," she said quietly. Everett looked up. "I am disappointed. Because they lied about me? Because they taught me to look for threats before I looked for people." The honesty surprised her. Everett had spent his entire life surrounded by advisors who gave him answers they thought he wanted to hear. Clara was the first person who gave him the truth without fear. Finra rested beside the table, watching them both. As usual, the wolf seemed to understand everything before everyone else. The investigation revealed the missing piece. Years ago, a group within the council had altered old records to make the pack believe that only noble bloodlines could create a strong alpha bond. Clara's family had not been a threat. They had been protectors of an older tradition that valued loyalty, compassion, and trust above status. Lord Adrian Voss had not created the lie alone, but he had protected it because it benefited the old system. When Everett confronted him, the council chamber was silent. "You knew the truth," Everett said. Voss looked down. "I knew what kept the pack stable." Everett's expression hardened. "No, you knew what kept certain people powerful." For the first time, Voss had no answer. The pack gathered once again in the royal courtyard. This time, Clara did not stand behind Everett. She stood beside him, not because she needed protection, because she had earned her place. Everett looked at his people. "For too long, we believed leadership came from control. We believed strength meant never changing." He looked toward Finra. "But my wolf reminded me of something important." A true alpha does not demand loyalty. A true alpha earns it. The courtyard remained silent as Everett turned toward Clara. Clara Whitmore was never a threat to this pack. She was the person brave enough to tell me when I was wrong. Clara lowered her eyes slightly, uncomfortable with attention. Everett noticed and smiled. You still dislike being noticed? Very much, she replied. A quiet laugh moved through the crowd. Even the most serious members of the council could not deny the moment was real. Later that evening, Clara returned to the sanctuary. The place felt different now. Not because she had gained a title. Not because she lived closer to the throne. Because people finally saw what she had always been. Someone who listened. Someone who cared. Someone who understood that even the strongest creatures needed kindness. She opened her cottage door and found Finner waiting outside. Beside him was a small bundle of flowers. Clara crossed her arms. You know everyone understands what you are doing now, right? Finner looked away proudly. Behind him, Everett appeared. I tried to explain that subtlety was important. Clara looked at him. And did he listen? Everett glanced at the wolf. Not once. Clara laughed. It was a simple sound, but Everett realized it was the sound he had been missing for years. Not from the palace. Not from the throne. From his own life. Finner walked inside like he belonged there, because somehow he always had. And as the lights of Silvercrest glowed across the kingdom, everyone remembered a lesson the old records had tried to hide. A pack was not made stronger by keeping people apart. A king was not made greater by standing above everyone else. And a bond was never about possession. It was about choosing, every day, to protect what mattered. Clara remained an Omega who never needed a crown to prove her worth. Everett remained an Alpha King who finally understood that leadership was not carrying the world alone. It was having the courage to trust the people standing beside him. And somewhere in the royal sanctuary, a certain shadow wolf still occasionally disappeared with a scarf or a towel, leaving flowers behind as a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts reveal the biggest truths.